Hi guys, welcome back to the Forgetful Scholar, and I really want to thank you guys for being patient. It's been a rough couple of weeks for my family. We lost a family member, so thank you for being understanding that I needed to take a moment away. So I'm back, and I have one book for you. It's all I could manage this time around. So this came out not too long ago. It is The Reluctant Countess by Louisa James. Here we go. And I think it's the third in the Would-Be-Wallflower series. Beautiful cover. It came out 2022. So I'm going to do a quick non-spoiler review. FM historical, 5 stars, loved it. I love the main characters, like the main couple, and the people you were supposed to hate. Ooh, people you were supposed to hate. Ooh, did I hate them? I hate them. Okay, now that's done with the non-spoiler. Now we're gonna get into the spoilers. So, her mother is an English woman in France, married a Frenchman. Also, her mother is the mistress of Napoleon, and I called this in my book. In my mind, this book is gossip when I look at it, because when Yasmin was 16, she was introduced to court. And because everybody knew her mother was Napoleon's mistress, no one gossiped with her. So when, I believe it's pronounced Hierophant, I'm not sure, Hierophant Charles, who is a real life historical figure known to be Josephine's lover pretty soon after she married Napoleon Bonaparte. So she didn't know that he was the queen's lover, and she didn't know that he was a known fortune hunter, right? So at 16, this asshole seduces her, gets a priest to fake marry them, and for a week she thought she was married to him. After that week, he goes to her father and basically blackmails him. The father shows up, disgusted with her, said, "Don't you know the gossip about him?" And she's like, "No one would gossip with me because of mother." So that's why gossip is a big part of Yasmin's life, because she felt without that knowledge, she preyed victim to this piece of shit. And also gossip destroyed her in the French court, right? And she was 16. Like, she was a baby. Like, where were her parents? Like, obviously she's part of the prestige. Where was, like, her chaperone? It's okay. That's part of the story. Anyway, it's 8 years later, and she's living with her uncle, her grandfather, who is a British duke. And he reminded me of Seth Hazlitt from Murder, She Wrote, kind of like an older curmudgeon, but like heart of gold. Like, he just adores her. Like, he loves her. And he acts more like a parent to her than her parents. And Jasmine, oh, pobrecita, like, I loved her right away. And like, I love that she had that support. And she has 2 best friends, which I assume are the other 2 novels in the series. Because this, I think, is the 3rd part. But that's what happens when you thrift books. But also, the author did a fantastic job that I didn't feel lost. Her story was well contained, well paced. You got a little trickle of the other books in the series that made me intrigued, but they didn't take over, you know, so it was wonderfully done that way. So 8 years later, and she is in English society, and she's a bit of a flirt, but because of what happened, again, don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Hierophant Charles, she has a lot of trauma associated with sex. So she's a flirt, but that's as far as it goes. She's kind of prudish otherwise. You know what I mean? She's got trauma. So, and she's gorgeous and she's vivacious. So all the men kind of flock to her, including one, Giles, who is the main guy. And I really liked him. There was a lot of parts in this, a lot of characters in this story that reminded me of Pride and Prejudice. So Giles reminds me of Darcy. Mr. Darcy from Pride and Prejudice. So he's very like proper, and he hates gossip because he feels gossip ruined his life, like ruined his family. Because of gossip, his father kissed himself. And because of gossip, his mother died. And like when they explained what she died from, I kind of thought back to Sims 4, where I think it's with the paranormal stuff pack that your sim could die from heart explosion. So like she worked herself into such a fit that she died. Like a sim. So he hates gossip, right? And he's completely drawn to Yasmin. But he knows that she's not proper, like she wouldn't make a proper countess. You know what I mean? At least what she shows to people in balls and stuff like that. But he always dances with her because he just can't help himself, right? Very Mr. Darcy-like. And Yasmin, she has a very, like her reaction to Giles, which I liked, was very different than her reaction to other men in her life that hit on her. She usually flirts with them and kind of keeps them at a distance. With Giles, she always finds, she thinks he hates her. So she always finds she's trying to get a reaction out of him. And she's fantasized about being with him. Not in the biblical sense, but like having a life with him. So he's already, I love that already their reactions to each other is set apart from the reactions to other people. I think that's a great indicator in romances. You know, a nice little trick that they do in romance novels to kind of simulate like the soulmate kind of thing, right? Now, Giles has a younger sister who I fucking hate. Lydia. I hate her more than Hierophant. I mean, I hate him too, but I hate Lydia more. She's on her second season, and because what happened with her parents, she was bullied at school, which sucks, yes. But her revenge is to seduce all of her school bullies' brothers. Now, I think Yasmin cemented it the best in her POV that, like, she understands Lydia's thirst for vengeance, but this is the kind of retribution that's just going to damage her in the end, because Yasmin knows what gossip does, you know, how it could be used to, you know, keep a girl safe and also be used to destroy a girl. You know what I mean? Like, she knows. And I love how Yasmin, through that, the author did a great job of showing why Yasmin does not spread gossip, but she collects it. You know what I mean? To keep herself knowledgeable, and she doesn't want Lydia to fall into that trap. And Lydia hates Yasmin because she knows that her brother reacts to her different. And Lydia is a hypocrite, which I hate more than anything. Just like flames. Flames. So she, because their mother, Giles and Lydia's mother, had a lot of affairs. And she thinks Yasmin would be the same. And it would ruin her brother so absolutely. So she thinks that she's right in what she does. And the thing about Lydia is that you can't even see it from the point of view of her loving her brother and trying to be protective, because Lydia comes off as just sort of an entitled, spoiled brat that just wants to win the argument. That she doesn't actually care about Giles's happiness. She just wants to be right. And I think the author did a fantastic job of having that come across because of that selfishness in this. I didn't find anything really redeeming about her. And I don't think you're supposed to. Which I really, really liked. So, I mean, there is a British Duke. He seems fun. They're about the same age as Giles. Him and Giles went to school together. And I guess he's sort of set up as like perhaps the third in a triangle, but romance novels don't really do love triangles that way. So I think he was just there to make Giles jealous and kind of push story plot. He did seem interested in Yasmin. Interested in what? I don't know. Because the thing about him is like him and Yasmin are friendly, and he notices Yasmin obviously is just a flirt. She doesn't do anything else, you know. But at the same time, he makes jokes and comments, jokes that if he really thought Yasmin was a lady, a man in his position in this society would never make to her, you know. And Giles has his flaws. He kind of reminded me a little bit of Sheldon from this book reminded me a lot of different things. Like not very good at social interactions. So he says things sometimes that hurt her feelings, and I like how the writer didn't let him off the hook for that. Like, they have a huge argument about it, and, you know, well, anyway, but even though that being said, he never treated her less than a lady. Like, he always treats her as a lady in their peer group of status. He doesn't treat her, he doesn't make sexual jokes, doesn't like, you know, because, like, the Duke made a joke and then looked at her cleavage, you know, and it offended her. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry I offended you. I'm like, of the ton. You know you wouldn't do that if it was somebody else. So, like, I didn't really, like, oh my god, oh my god, it's a love triangle. No. Which is good, because romance novels really don't do that. That's more of a fantasy YA thing. Anyway, so I'm happy they didn't, like, set him up as maybe a possible. Well, only kind of make Giles jealous. Anyway, they get together, Giles and Yasmin, and I like that the love scenes, like, she has trauma regarding sex. So he is so patient, and he's like, oh, and I like how they work through it together. He's like, you set your pace, we'll get through this together. And I was wondering what his reaction would be when he finds out the truth about Hierophant, and I really hope that wasn't going to be the source of the third act conflict. And I'm happy to say it isn't. So they're kind of doing it in secret, because Lydia is just, like, spreading rumors, doing all these things to set Yasmin up for rumors to destroy her. And, like, Giles is kind of doesn't, because he loves his little sister, so he doesn't really see this, you know what I mean? And, okay, so Yasmin and Giles are secretly engaged while Lydia is in the spotlight being engaged. So they decide not to come out into society until Lydia's happily married, because Yasmin knows she would be a problem. And she is. So everything's kind of secret. The grandfather knows and approves and thinks the whole thing is super amusing and stuff like that. It was just super cute. And one of the arguments that kind of creates the third act conflict is Giles saying things that made Yasmin feel small. And I like how she's like, you've made me feel small. And, like, his sorrow at hurting her, you feel it from his point of view. So that, I love that, you know, and that's the cause of the third act conflict, where they separate for a little bit. So I love that. And the whole time Yasmin's like, I'm going to ruin your reputation, because he sits on the House of Lords, and I don't really know what term in the British society, especially at the time, what would you call him politically, but in America at this time, you would call him a progressive, you know? So I'm not sure. And he's like a powerhouse in the House of Lords. Like, he really gets things done. He's like a big guy, a big thing. And she's worried her reputation would destroy him and all this. A lot of, for someone who is so confident in herself, she has insecurities. And I like that it shows, because even the most confident, perfect people still have issues, you know? So I like that. So they have a big fight about his past treatment of her, and they separate. They're still secretly engaged, but separate. She goes to her friends in the country. He finishes up the circuit with Lydia. Lydia is a huge see you next Tuesday, and I don't use that term lightly. She steals their correspondence, and every morning she makes sure she tells him something about, like, oh, Yasmin was seen with this gentleman, you know, kind of making up things. And he knows she lies and stuff like that, and he kind of confronts her with that. But he hasn't heard from Yasmin, so he's terrified that their engagement is over. And Yasmin hasn't heard from him, and she's terrified that, like, he's done with her, because she hears rumors about him with other people as well. And Yasmin's pregnant and all this stuff, and she's like, I have to tell him that I'm pregnant and all this stuff. Because the whole time Lydia was stealing their correspondence. So finally Lydia's married, and Giles is racing back to the house to grab his things, because he's going to the country to find Yasmin. You know what I mean? And one of her best friends, either the best friend's American or he's American. I think her husband is American. I'm not sure about that, but her best friend, American, shows up to basically drag Giles to where Yasmin is. And Giles is like, no, I'm going there right now. I haven't heard from her. And he's like, bullshit. She's been writing you every day. And he's like, no, I've been writing her every day. And he's like, you haven't heard from her in like a month, and you're just sitting here? You didn't go to her? You know, so he kind of, I like that, not like the main people don't get let off the hook when they do something wrong, you know what I mean? Or we're inconsiderate, you know what I mean? So I do really enjoy that. So he goes to her, it turns out he realizes Lydia did this horrible thing and stuff like that, right? And he's like, before he even knows about the baby, he's like, I need you, you're my everything. It's a very sweet, beautiful moment. And also, I forgot to mention this part. When he finds out what happens, because Hierophant shows up and tells the room at large what happened, as if they were going to shame her like her parents did, Giles punches the dude out. I loved it. You know what I mean? Because the grandfather knew what happened, and he financially destroyed Hierophant from where he was. And he's like, if I ever see Hierophant in the British Isles, I'll kill him. Totally get it, Grandpa. That's awesome. But when Hierophant does show up and he tells everybody what happened, I do like that the Ton kind of didn't like victim blame her, but she is considered a fallen woman because even though she thought they were married, they weren't, you know, all that stuff. So I did like that the people that she thought would be harsher than even the French court were a little kinder in that regard, but they still considered her like an unsuitable woman of prestige to marry because she wasn't a virgin. Anyway, I love Giles' reaction. He just punches her. He just not her. He punches him. I would hate it if he punched her. Wow. Okay. So he punches Hierophant. Knocks him out, right? And the only reason he didn't challenge him to a duel because he assumed Jasmine would not want that. And she's like, yeah, I wouldn't have wanted that. And then he dances a waltz with her. So not because like Giles is kind of high enough in the prestige that he kind of sets certain tones and things like that because he's really big in the House of Lords. He's a count, you know, things like that. He's really high up. So him dancing with her right after that happened, not only punching the guy and dancing with her, showed like he does not blame her. It is not her fault. And I think the rest of the society kind of followed that, even though she's not a virgin, so she's not considered marriage material, but still they didn't victim blame her like the French court. I feel like I'm really like disparaging the French court. It's just a book. So I love that part. And okay, so they find out Lydia's betrayal and Giles is just like, I'm done with her, right? And happy ending, right? And there's 2 epilogues, which I was like, oh, 2 epilogues, that's interesting. But I enjoyed them both. The first one, it shows from, I guess, it's from a different person's point of view. And I'm assuming he's gonna be a main character in his own story. I'm not familiar enough with Louisa James and how she does things. But one of the epilogues was from the new French ambassador, and he's at court. And the old ambassador is like telling him pointers. And he's like, oh, that's Lady Yasmin. She is the Countess. She rules the court. Everyone follows her example. Like, because Yasmin was so terrified that her reputation would disparage Giles. No, they turned into a power couple. A power couple. And like the old ambassador is like, be careful, her husband is super powerful and very jealous. And she doesn't even, you know, because she only has eyes for Giles, you know. And he only has eyes for Yasmin, right? So they're happily married, and she didn't destroy his reputation. She added to it, you know, because throughout the book, one of the things Giles loves so much about her is how brilliant she is at language and how he's so impressed by that. So I like how Giles saw past just the pretty face, you know. And the second epilogue, which I really, really liked, she gives birth to their child, and she's like, oh, Lydia sent this, a present for their kid. And Giles just kind of doesn't respond because he's still pissed. Not only did Lydia do, like, a huge hypocrite. So when Lydia married, she ran off with somebody else, right? So like, Giles is just like, I'm not forgiving her. And I was like, yes, Giles, don't forgive her. Don't. Because, like, he doesn't say anything when Yasmin's like, oh, Lydia's trying. He doesn't respond. He just talks about how much he loves their kid and her, and that's it. Because, yeah, what Lydia did, it shouldn't be wrapped up in a tiny little bow. I don't know if she gets her own story. It would be interesting, though, to see if the author can redeem this See You Next Tuesday. Because, man, oh, man, did I hate her. So, yes, only one book this week. Again, things have been not the best. But hopefully I'll get back on track. But I loved it. It's 5 stars. I'm going to try to see if I could get the others in this series. So I don't want to, but it's time for me to get back to the real world. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye.